some traders are expecting from the finance minister.
Coming up in business news, Bank of Ghana in partnership with Chartered Institute of Bankers roll out mandatory charter certification to target rising fraud cases involving bank staff.
On the international front, UN warns that women in Sudan are suffering horrors no one should ever endure, with rape, murder, and the abduction of their children rife in the war-torn country. We're live around the world on 3news.com. That's our website. We are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube as well, and we always love to hear from you.
In our very first story, an investigative committee that probed the August 6, 2025 military helicopter crash has confirmed the crash of the aircraft as having lost altitude and lift, resulting from a powerful downdraft. A formal presentation of the report has also ruled out any human error on the part of the pilot, whom the investigators have described as highly qualified and certified to fly.
The final findings closes the critical technical chapter on the tragedy, focusing on the volatile environmental forces at play over high terrain. Captain Paul Fojo, an aircraft accident investigator, confirmed that the Z9EH utility helicopter operated by the Ghana Air Force was airworthy but lacked modern safety systems that could have helped the pilot avoid the fatal descent.
The investigation determined that the accident was caused by the sudden loss of altitude and lift due to downdraft. This loss of altitude without change in power or pitch altitude is consistent with downdraft associated with changing environmental conditions over high terrain.
The crash led to the deaths of the Minister for Defense, Dr. Edward Omani-Boama, the Minister for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, the Acting Deputy National Security Coordinator, Limuna Muniru, the NDC National Vice Chairman, Samuel Sapong, the Deputy Director General of NATMO, Samuel Abuaji, together with 3 Air Force crew members. A 30-day investigation board chaired by the National Security Coordinator, COP Abdul Osman Razak, and supported by the technical advisors from the United States Air Force, it was set up to determine the causes and circumstances leading to the crash.
There was adverse weather, there was limited visibility, there was rising rugged terrain, with this terrain-induced complicating factors, and there were no ground-based navigational route aids en route. The investigation would like to say that from everything they gathered, the emergency response was very timely. The fact that these first responders managed to get to the site in about 2 hours was remarkable.
Captain Fojo said the investigation found no evidence of mechanical fault, human error, or medical impairment.
The captain was a qualified FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, commercial and instrument-rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, USA, in April 2015, 10 years ago. It's interesting to note that for quite a while, and as at now in the Air Force, the highest category is Cat C. So the pilot was totally competent to be flying this plane.
The investigators used data from the flight recorders, which were decoded at the Aviation Industry Corporation of China. On systemic issues, the committee found that the Ghana Air Force lacked real-time tracking systems, flight data monitoring, and simulator-based training. It therefore recommended that the government acquires an aircraft with terrain awareness and advanced navigation systems, invest in simulators for pilot training, and establish national en route navigational aids and real-time weather monitoring systems.
We have recommended that the Air Force acquire modern aircraft with terrain avoidance warning systems and modern navigation systems. that the aircraft should have cockpit voice recorders and flight data recorders, which are the audiovisual capable types, that the Air Force should invest in simulators for recurrent training, that they contract certified aviation weather provider or providers, and that Ghana as a nation should try to have en route navigational aids, especially in remote areas.
The families of the victims have welcomed the report.
Yes, we are very satisfied because considering what we've been briefed, we gather that it's an act of God because nobody controls the weather except the Almighty. And for that matter, we have accepted it in good faith.
And coming up on your screen, some of the recommendations made by the committee. And according to the committee report, there should be modernization of Ghana Air Force fleet. And the Air Force also needs to acquire ground supporting system to modernize what they already have. Already there's been talks about this recommendation. Also, they need to acquire an aircraft with TAWS, which is the Terrain Awareness and Wellness Systems, and EGPWS and Advanced Navigation Systems. Also, there is the need to install the cockpit voice recording as well as the flight data recordings as well. Also, during Captain Fodro's speech, he did say that the Air Force should also seriously consider flight data monitoring and route tracking system. It further did recommend the engagement of a certified aviation weather provider to establish en route navigational aids and tracking systems and implement flight data monitoring, as well as provide adequate ground support equipment.
Let's go on to some other stories now. We are going to Parliament, where the Speaker of the House, Alban Bagbin, has apologized to the judiciary and its members for the heated exchanges and lack of decorum that characterized the vetting of the Chief Justice nominee on Monday. He has directed the Appointments Committee leadership to take notice of the vetting incident and ensure that highest standards of civility in future proceedings. Meanwhile, the majority leader has been called for action against the minority for alleged breach of parliamentary rules.
We gather to vet a disputed nominee for office of Chief Justice of Ghana. This should be a moment of national pride and institutional renewal.
Chairman, I have an issue. The ranking member has no right, no lawful authority to raise anything about what happened in court, the processes leading to a removal of anybody, and the nomination of anybody. You have no right, pursuant to our rules, to raise those issues. So be guided, because if you raise them, I'm going to object.
A long-held position by the minority that the appointment of Justice Bafo Boni is unconstitutional resulted in fiery objections at the vetting on Monday. Speaker Bagbin has denounced the incident.
I have directed the leadership of the Appointments Committee to take note of this incident and to ensure that in all future proceedings, the highest standards of civility, objectivity, and institutional respect are maintained.
He has assured that Parliament would continue to respect its relations with other arms of government.
The judiciary is independent of control or direction from any person or authority. The doctrine of separation of powers requires that all three arms of government, the executive, legislature, and judiciary, relate to one another with mutual respect and restraint.
In a separate issue, the majority leader has accused the minority leader of breaching rules governing parliamentary privilege. He claims Alexander Afenyo-Markin attended an ECOWAS parliament against an earlier resolution by Parliament which removed his name from Ghana's delegation. He wants the leader referred to the Privileges Committee for possible sanctions.
By defying this Parliament, resolution removing him from the delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament and actually going to Port Harcourt and attending the session, Mr. Speaker, he has clearly affronted the dignity and engaged in an act that constitutes an affront to the authority of this Parliament, pursuant to the appropriate orders to refer the Honorable Afenyomarkin Alexander Kwamina to the Privileges Committee for him to be processed, that the appropriate sanctions be executed in relation to the Honorable Alexander Kwamina Afenyomarkin.
The Speaker has indicated that he would look into the matter and deliver a ruling on Wednesday, November 12.
And away from Parliament, the conversation to move Ghana's general election date from December 7 to November has come up back again, reigniting debate over whether the country should adjust its electoral calendar to allow more time for petitions and a smoother transition of power. The comments of the Chief Justice nominee on the change of date during his vetting has once again stirred political and public interest in a proposal tabled by the Electoral Commission in 2024. Noble Crosby Annan has filed this report.
The debate over Ghana's general election date has resurfaced. Currently, elections are held on December 7, with the winning parliamentary and presidential candidates sworn in on January 7. The Electoral Commission last year proposed shifting the election date to a day in November around the 7th or 8th and designating that day as a national holiday.
It was a proposal from the parties in 2015-2016, but the EC was not able to see to its implementation because Parliament did not back it in 2015. So the EC decided to resurrect it because apart from it going to benefit the political party, it's also going to benefit the EC.
The National Democratic Congress opposed rushing the change for the 2024 election cycle, arguing that any major electoral reform should take effect later, around 2028. The NDC now says they are not against the idea, but considering the time the conversation came up, the Electoral Commission was ill-prepared to implement it then.
When the matter came up, at that time, we were certain in our mind that the Electoral Commission was not prepared for that changes at all.
Acting Director of Elections of the NDC, Rashid Tanko Computer, says it is good that the conversations have begun now and that the party is approaching the discussions with an open mind.
So now that it's coming out early enough for such discussion, I mean, why not? It's something that we can all come to on the round table to discuss it. We are open-minded.
The Electoral Commission later decided to maintain the December 7 date. At his vetting, Chief Justice nominee Paul Bafuboni reignited the conversation.
Even though the 2020 election petition also lasted for only 42 days, it lasted beyond the inauguration. First suggestion that came, which we think was a masterstroke, was that we should have the elections on the 7th or the 8th of November.
For governance expert Professor David Abdullahi, any change in the election date, if pursued, would require extensive public education and a thorough cost-benefit analysis.
What is the importance of having it in November? Now, we must weigh that importance and the cost. That cost-benefit analysis would actually help.
As things stand, Parliament will have to agree on the new date for it to be introduced into Ghana's electoral system.
Let's now turn our attention to the budget presentation on Thursday. And with just a few days to its presentation, traders at the Nima markets are hoping for measures that will make life easier. Many say they are struggling to keep their businesses afloat due to the rising cost of goods, unstable cedi and high taxes. Our reporter Grace Hamwajiman was at the market and has more.
It's a typical day at the Nima market. Busy, loud, and full of life. But behind the bars is frustration. For most traders here, business has not been the same in recent months.
Fita na pa ya shedwa eti hu sa. Yes, I think Niama. Yeah, trying to say month for baby up to now. Mumbai.
I have been here since 7 a.m. and haven't sold anything. Sales these days is very slow.
So be shy baby afa ho a. Say scan any my mo say you didn't mention.
We want measures that lead to price reduction in goods. With the finance minister set to present the 2026 budget, traders say they want practical solutions to ease their daily struggles and make small businesses thrive.
Dollar no sun some bra from my because your new man at cities safer and to $20 and back for my cities very stable.
Currency stability is what we want, especially with the CFA and the dollar.
Oh, budget what me now to man be a tax when they go no what me if you are no man be.
There are a lot of taxes on goods and services. We want them reduced.
Papa to no buy so far never from.
Me maintain any drivers no because almost see ya say I use petrol. Ana but to go for dropping.
Fuel prices have gone down recently, but transport fares remain high and we want that changed. Finance Minister Dr. Kasia Latteforsen is expected to present the 2026 budget statement and economic policy to Parliament on November 13, with keen interest on the management of the fiscal deficit and expenditure in 2026 while maintaining macroeconomic stability. So from the price of an olonka of gari right to transport fares, every shift in the economy is felt right here in these market centers. And even as the minister readies to present the budgets, the market folks tell me they will be on the lookout, waiting for relief and real solutions. Grace Hamuajiman, TV3 News, Nima Markets, Accra.
And in just 48 hours, all eyes will be on Parliament as the Finance Minister takes the floor to present the much-anticipated 2026 budget statement. As the countdown begins, we take a closer look at the bigger picture, the macroeconomic targets this administration sets for itself, how those targets have evolved over time, and what the latest economic indicators and trends reveal about the current state of Ghana's economy. But first, let's revisit a moment from the mid-year budget review where the Finance Minister did outline government's key macroeconomic targets.
Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic target. Economic development in the first half of the year do not warrant a revision to the macroeconomic target and the appropriations bill. Mr. Speaker, I am not asking for additional money from the Appropriations Act. We maintain the following macroeconomic target for 2025. 1. Overall GDP growth at least 4.0%. At least. Non-oil GDP growth of at least 4.8%. End-year inflation rate of 11.9%. Primary balance on commitment basis at a surplus of 1.5% of GDP. And gross international reserves covering not less than 3 months of import. Mr. Speaker, although we have made significant progress, we are cautiously optimistic.
Let's now head to the dashboard for a closer look. And Martin, were we able to meet our targets?
Absolutely. Some, in fact, most of them, the Finance Minister mentioned, we have been able to meet it. And the key macro indicators that he touched on are what we're also going to be looking at. The first will be the issue of the exchange rate and how the cedi has performed against the foreign currencies or the major trading currencies. And clearly, you can tell from this graph that Ghana's cedi has risen to very dizzying heights and has come to some very low lows. But as it stands, and from what the president himself said about our currency having to hover between 10 and 12%, where 12 cedis, which will be like it finding its true value, that is where we currently are. So the graph tells us that as of May 2025, we're around 15 cedis to the dollar. But today, as we speak, on November 2025, the cedi to the dollar is about 10 cedis to $1, 10.95. So it means that the target that was set between 10 and 12%, which was actually set by the president, we are within that. Again, we come to issues of trade balance. You know, Ghana, almost always you hear this statement that has become like a cliche, where people say that Ghana is an import-driven economy. We import more than we export. Well, if you look at this particular period, between January and August 2025, the country has actually exported more than we have imported. So we exported about $17.9 billion worth of goods and services or items from the country, as against how much we actually imported. And most of this have to do with gold and our major export commodities. Again, another key issue we are paying attention to is our reserves. How much do we have in our affairs as a country, which is an indication of how much we have to spend or can spend. Again, if you look from December 2024 last year, the international reserve that Ghana had was about 8 billion. Coincidentally, this administration promised that they are going to work hard to ensure that we build upon how much we have in our reserves. And you just heard the finance minister talk about a promise of ensuring that our international reserve can sustain us for about 3.5 months. Well, that was the target, 3.5 months of how much we have in our reserves. Fortunately, they've actually exceeded that, and the amount of $10.75 billion that we have in our international reserve as of August 2025 tells us that we are actually about 4.5 months, meaning that if the current administration or government shuts down totally, nothing is going on, we'll still have enough money to be able to maintain our imports for at least 4.5 months. Let's go to the elephant in the room, which many have been talking about, issues of inflation. And this is how the trend has looked like since October 2024. And today we are in October 2025. And if you look clearly, there has been a major improvement as regards our inflationary figures. And it tells you that the promise of maintaining or getting into a single-digit inflation before the year ends or by end of year, the government's target of 11.9 is gradually becoming a fruition where we are likely to have a single-digit inflation, currently hovering around 8.1%. Again, the debt profile of the country. Now, if you take Ghana as a man, if you work, you earn salary. That amount is what you spend. How much you spend vis-a-vis how much you owe, which you will take from your salary, is what could tell whether you are making progress or you have money or you are going to be in perpetual debt. We are in debt, yes, but if you look at how much we are earning as a country now vis-a-vis how much we owe and the payments we are making, both domestic and foreign, tells you that the management of the economy and our books are actually very, very good or are looking positive in that we used to spend over 55% of how much we are earning as a country. And we used to actually pay, in terms of debts, excess of 55% of how much we had. But now it fell, as of May, to about 44, means we are spending or paying less of how much we are earning, and that is gradually rising. But we are hoping that tomorrow, Thursday, when the finance minister does go to Parliament, he will be able to tell us how they intend to maintain below half of how much we owe, and the debt to GDP rate is something that we are also going to be paying very key attention to as the minister reads the budget tomorrow, on Thursday, I should say. So you do want to stay with us, because on Thursday we'll bring you live coverage and further analysis of how the economy is playing out and what we need to do collectively to make sure we have a very positive country in terms of our economy. Back to you, Portia.
What are your expectations on Thursday? I'm
hoping that these indicators are maintained and improved upon, but by end of year, we probably could sustain the single-digit inflation. Hopefully. Thank you so much, Martin. Let's continue with the rest of our stories. And government has indicated its strongest resolve to strictly ensure the importation of bitumen for road constructions under the Big Push agenda remains up to standard as required for quality road constructions. At the sword cutting ceremony of the over 200-kilometer Wahan to Tumu road under government's Big Push agenda, Road Minister Kwame Gavins Abuja says there will be no room for shady work.
We're constructing and upgrading over 260 kilometers of roads in Upper West alone. Strategic roads linking Wa, Tumu, Han to Navrungo Wa, Laura to Hamile. These are all vital arteries that sustain agriculture, trade, education, and healthcare across the north. For far too long, these roads have been in deplorable condition. Farmers have struggled to transport their produce, traders have lost goods to bad roads, children have endured unsafe and lengthy commutes to school, and armed robbers have had a field day attacking our mothers coming from market. Today, I stand in Guli to say enough is enough.
Another issue that I am going to be working with the contractors to address. We have noticed that, Mr. President, under your big push, the amount of money, the volume of bitumen we are going to use on this project alone is over 600,000 tons, which is valued over 7 billion Ghana cedis. Your Excellency, one of the reasons that you see some of the roads we build fail is the quality of materials we use. There's no regime in our country that ensures that the bitumen we use is up to standard. And I'm going to be working with the contractors to ensure that no more free will for every contractor to import anything in the name of how do you call it, bitumen and sell. So we are going to be working, have a regime where we can certify that only bitumen that is fit for purpose is used to do your big push project, so that we can hold the investment we are putting in this.
In more news this evening, the Health Facilities Regulatory Authority, HEFRA, has shut down the Tamale Technical University Hospital after inspections revealed poor sanitation, poor safety and infection prevention standards. The hospital will remain closed until all safety issues are resolved, and HEFRA has also imposed a 35,000 Ghana cedi fine for regulatory violations and directed the facility to regularize its licensing status. The authority emphasized its mandate under the Health Institutions and Facilities Act 2011, Act 982, to license and monitor all healthcare facilities in Ghana to ensure safe service delivery.
Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited, SML, has filed a lawsuit against the Office of the Special Prosecutor at the Accra High Court, demanding the return of confiscated equipment and more than about $48 million in damages over what the company describes as unlawful detention of their equipment. Court documents reveal that OSP officers stormed SML premises on June 10, 2025, executing what the company describes as a heavily armed operation under a purported warrant. SML notes that the OSP seized servers, laptops, data storage devices, and specialized manual analysis equipment during the operation. They're asking the High Court to, among others, direct the OSP to return the equipment and a declaration that their seizure was unlawful.
We remain your trusted news source. This is News 360. Stay with us. Business, sports, entertainment are all coming up after this.
I love President Charcoal. Why?
When there are so many other charcoal toothpaste.
That's both charcoal and lemon.
Oh, does it?
Yes. Look right here.
Yes. Pepsodent Charcoal has two of nature's powerful whitening ingredients. With the power of activated charcoal and lemon essence, it removes stain and whitens teeth naturally.
Convinced?
Well, I am. Just look at your beautiful Pepsodent smiles.
For naturally whiter teeth, Pepsodent Charcoal.
policy, which also has the support of the Ghana Association of Banks, will be implemented in phases aimed to strengthen ethical conduct and raise professional standards across the industry. According to the Bank of Ghana's 2024 fraud report, financial misconduct involving bank staff is on the rise. A total of 365 employees from banks and specialized deposit-taking institutions were implicated in fraud cases, with 155 dismissed for offences including cash theft and suppression. The total value of risk exposure climbed to 99 million Ghana cedis, representing a 13% increase from the previous year. At the 29th National Banking Conference, the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana reaffirmed its commitment to tackling the issue through regulatory reform and professional development.
The Chartered Banker qualification, that's the ACIB, is now a compulsory qualification for all those working in the banking industry going forward. And GAB, Bank of Ghana, Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, we are completely aligned on that. And going forward, we want to re-professionalize our industry and make it even more ethical and more sustainable, and we want to put trust and trusted bankers at the heart and center of what we do.
The central bank, in a speech read on behalf of the governor, says the move, which will be implemented in phases, is part of a broader effort to restore public confidence in the banking sector.
Given the persistent rise in unprofessional conduct and banking practices and the need to develop a workplace of trustworthiness, ethical and competent professional bankers, the Bank of Ghana, as the President said, has given approval in principle to CIB Ghana's proposed mandatory ethics certification program for all banking professionals, as well as in the 5 years' time ensuring that all branch managers or all banking professionals, especially the branch officers, are ACIB holders.
The Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Pandit Isiama, has urged African central banks to deepen collaboration, strengthen credibility, and communicate monetary policy in a way that builds public trust. He was speaking at the opening of the maiden Bank of Ghana, Bank of England Pan-African Central Bank Governors Conference in Accra.
The two-day high-level conference has brought together governors and deputy governors from 23 central banks across Africa to discuss leadership, independence, and resilience in central banking. Dr. Isiama emphasized that modern central banking goes beyond policy decisions. It's about sustaining trust, communicating clearly, and maintaining discipline under pressure.
The true measure of our work will not be the communique we sign, but the confidence we inspire in each other, in our institutions, and in the economies that we serve.
British High Commissioner to Ghana, Christine Rogge, praised the long-standing partnership between the Bank of Ghana and the Bank of England, noting its role in sharing expertise and tackling common economic challenges.
We have gradually moved from a relationship that was often focused on aid and resource transfers to a relationship that is focused on sharing lessons, learning together, and bringing our expertise to the table to improve what we do in our respective institutions and countries.
For her part, Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, Claire Lombardelli, urged central banks to champion gender equality and inclusive leadership, saying diversity makes institutions more innovative and resilient.
As we celebrate the achievements of the past, including SETI at 60, we must also look to the future and ask ourselves how we can build even stronger, even more inclusive institutions. One area where we must be bold is advancing gender equality in the leadership of our central banks.
Now, while Ghana celebrates a significant increase in its foreign reserves, which reportedly hit $11 billion in 2025 on the back of strong gold and cocoa exports, a leading financial analyst has sounded a note of caution regarding the sustainability of this growth. Head of Finance and Melbourne Capital, Nelson Kuchukwu, acknowledged the current financial strength but warned that the economy remains exposed to the underlying risk of commodity price volatility.
We at Melbourne Capital have long projected the gross international reserve to hit about $12 billion by the end of the year. This is against the backdrop of the fact that the external sector has been doing very well. And so the $11 billion is actually not surprising. And as a result of this, the cedi has been enjoying some relative stability. We have also seen the inflation coming down to single digit, and most of the macroeconomic indicators are doing very well. However, the underlying risk factors are there. The volatilities are still there because we don't have control over the price of these commodities. And so it is prudent for us to relook at it. Whilst the windfall is here, we take advantage of it. But going forward, I think we need to concentrate more on diversifying our economy by adding more value to these raw materials in order to sustain the inflows that we receive from the external sector.
And that'll be all for the business segment here on News 360. I am Michael Obodu. We'll bring you updates now from the currency and the commodities market.
sports segment is brought to you by Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the sports segment here on News 360 with me, Oreku Ampofo. Let's start off from the camp of the Black Stars as Ghana's head coach Otto Addo has named his squad to face Japan and South Korea on November 14 and 18 respectively in the upcoming Kirin Cup. 3 players were given maiden call-ups, while 6 notable players, including Black Star skipper Jordan Ayew and Mohamed Kudus, were not included in the team.
Republic this particular campaign. He was dubbed as one of the best young players coming up, but a very big injury left him out for quite a long time, but he's back, he's fit and he's firing and he is scoring goals. But there's also Kelvin Nkrumah who actually plies his trade for Medeama SC. Now, he hasn't scored a goal yet in the Ghana Premier League this season, but he's seen as an option that Otto Addo will want to count on. He plays as a winger for Medeama SC. Now, to the local players who have been called, Benjamin Asari, of course, a goalkeeper who featured in the World Cup qualifiers. There's also Prince Owusu, who is a midfielder for Medeama SC, who also featured. There's also Prince Owusu, who is a midfielder for Medeama SC, who also featured against Central African Republic in the World Cup qualifiers. And then there's Kelvin Nkrumah, as I mentioned, 18th of November. Both games will be shown live on TV3 and Onia TV.
Always still stay on this Kirin Cup because former Black Stars head coach Chris Hughton believes that Ghana need to find the right balance ahead of the tournament. Hughton, who was at the helm for the Black Stars in the last Kirin Cup, spoke exclusively to 3 Sports.
Yeah, I think that having qualified for the World Cup, it's now the process is of preparation. So these 2 games, and I'm quite sure that Otto will use this. You have to try to get that right balance because come the World Cup, you want the players that have played as many games as possible together. But also it's an opportunity to have a look at some of the players that have not played so much. These are high-profile games. What I would imagine that both of these countries, that's Korea and Japan, will want to play against Black Stars teams that have, our best players in. So it is really about getting that balance. So I'm quite sure that there'll be strong teams. You want to go into the next games, into the New Year's, having a good run. I mean, Otto at this moment is on a good run of not losing games. That's that type of momentum you want to keep going. So it's always difficult to get that right balance. You could put out the strongest team in these 2 games and not win. You could mix the team up, put some young players in and win the game. These are all questions in hindsight. I'm sure we'll get the right balance, but it's important to try and keep that winning mentality going into next year because you don't know. Going into March, April, maybe there's some players that have been injured and they're now coming back. So it's really important to try to get these right balances because the team will be judged.
Well, before we go, let's head to Morocco, where news just coming in is that Nigerian players and officials failed to train on Tuesday due to unpaid bonuses that date as far back as 2019. Sources close to the team have confirmed that until there are assurances from the Nigerian Football Federation that these bonuses and allowances would be paid, they would not train. Remember that Nigeria have to face Gabon on Thursday in the World Cup playoff. And if they do win that, then 3 days later, they would face the winner of the DR Congo versus Cameroon game. You can get updates of all these stories and more on our social media handles at 3SportsGH and on 3News/sports. My name is Oreku Ampofo.
Entertainment news segment is brought to you by GTP Lifestyle and Napa Foods. Heaven Black Insecticide Spray and Coil. Powered by 3 Entertainment.
Well, good evening and welcome to the entertainment news segment here on News 360. My name is Noella Donko. Now, the final funeral rites for Ghanaian high life legend Charles Kwadwo, popularly known as Daddy Lumba, has been officially rescheduled to December 13, 2025, following a meeting held at the Menchia Palace in Kumasi. Now, sources close to the family and traditional authorities confirmed that the new date was agreed upon after extensive consultations to ensure the ceremony aligns with Asante cultural protocols and receives the appropriate royal blessings. Now, originally slated for December 6, 2025, the change is intended to allow for wider national participation and adequate preparation for what is expected to be one of the most significant funerals in Ghana's music history. The late Daddy Lumba, whose passing sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, is celebrated as one of Ghana's greatest musical icons. Over a career spanning more than 3 decades, he produced numerous timeless hits and played a pivotal role in shaping the modern high-life sound, leaving an indelible legacy in Ghana's cultural and musical heritage. And now to some more stories. Ghanaian rap icon Sarkodie has announced plans to take his flagship concert Rapaholic to London in 2026, marking the first time the annual event will be held outside Ghana. The acclaimed artist made the revelation during fellow musician Famia's London concert on November 9, 2025, where he thrilled fans with a surprise announcement. Now, Sarkodie told the ecstatic crowd that the upcoming edition will feature an impressive lineup of Ghana's biggest stars, promising an unforgettable show for fans in the UK. And now finally, before we go, comedy legend Eddie Murphy is showing us. And that'll be it for the entertainment news segment here on News 360. My name is Noella Donko.
Thank you so much, Noella. Coming up, international news.
The UN has warned that women in Sudan are suffering horrors no one should ever endure, with rape, murder, adoption of their children rife in the war-torn country. After 540 days of siege, Al-Fasher fell to the RSF on 23rd of October 2025, with reports emerging of mass atrocities and catastrophic humanitarian crisis. People fleeing the city have described civilians being shot in the streets and attacked in drone strikes. Women escaping from Al-Shafar say they have witnessed killings, rape, and the disappearance of their children.
Thank you so much for watching the news bulletin for the last hour. I am Martin Esiedu Date.
And I am Portia Gabodu. Join Beatrice Sedu for Agenda at 9 p.m. as well as 10 p.m. after the Council with Ghana Tonight. Good evening.